Hey everyone, I'm Matthew Coble. Welcome to another episode of WWT Experts. I'll be your host today. And today we're talking about information technology, IT, and operational technology, OT, with WWT expert Tim Householder. Tim is from Worldwide Technologies manufacturing and distribution practice, and he's an industry advisor with over 15 years working with clients across multiple verticals, including retail, healthcare, manufacturing. During the past decade, he's focused on developing solutions with manufacturing clients to help them adapt and adopt technology the way it best meets the dynamic environments in which they work. So delighted to have him here. Tim, welcome. Good to see you.
Thanks, Matt. Good to see you.
Great to see you back in St. Louis. How is it to be in town with us?
It's good. You know, I was traveling last week over in Germany at Hannover Messe, but I'm telling you, when I come in here, it seems like there's always some festivity happening. So it always seems like a party going on every time I visit. I'm not going to say it's because of me, but you're welcome.
Oh, you can take credit for
that. Right, okay. All
right, well, let's roll on with the Tim party then.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, you spent some time in Germany last week at a conference, talked to lots of people about IT and OT. So based on that and just your general expertise, what's the current state of the market in this space?
Sure. So, the point that we were bringing home to the audience at Hannover Messe in Germany was about convergence. That's a word that gets thrown around a lot when you talk about IT, OT. And really what we were trying to bring to the forefront was that convergence has happened. Right? So a lot of people are still waiting for it to happen or thinking something more is going to happen, but it's there. So we're prompting teams to really try to come forward and work and collaborate and cooperate with the IT teams and the OT teams together to work with the architectures and the tools and the platforms that have been established in the standards and to start to make some outcomes happen within their environments and get some value out of all that investment.
So I know that, IT is typically wanting to kind of, dictate things and dictate those technology decisions. And often IT just sees kind of OT as one of their many clients or customers within the organization. But, it also seems like OT is getting more and more important. So does that IT approach still work, or what kinds of things do they need to think about differently maybe?
No, there's been some changes in how IT is approaching OT and the teams and what they're delivering to them. And that goes all the way up from leadership down to the folks in the teams really delivering the solutions and maintaining them day to day. And what that is a lot of times IT would say, well, hey, this is what we deployed for enterprise. This is what our finance department and HR departments consume, and manufacturing's like, we aren't those departments.
It's not gonna work for us?
That's not how we operate. They don't speak to our KPIs, and they don't really deliver the value that we need. So IT is really starting to take a step back, and it's really cool to see internally them acting like what we do a lot of times with our clients, where we take a more consultative approach, right? And we try to start where they are and understand where they are and what they really need out of a solution, and then develop it from there, right? A lot of times the IT department has come in with a technology-first mentality, and when we have these consultative talks with the teams and the clients, we try to encourage them to bring the OT teams to the table. Or if the OT teams are having vendors in that maybe have a specific talent or skill or product that needs to be in the environment, to bring the IT folks in so they understand that. And really collaborate and cooperate and keep that dialogue open.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I hear that from a lot of the experts who've come through, that IT now has kind of a more important role to play in the business and more responsibility for those business outcomes. And it's good to hear that we're both counseling them to do that more and also kind of seeing them play a role in that, right?
Well, a lot of times it is about the IT. You hear it a lot of times. IT is a cost center, right? And OT is the line of business. You're a lot of times hear OT also referred to as the line of business. They make the product that produces the revenue that pays for all the other stuff. So they're the most important, right? And so they control a lot of the budget, right? And a lot of the IT budget goes into them, right? So when you're speaking to both of those teams at once, you're covering a big portion of what their strategy and their budget spend is and what projects they're going to be focusing on throughout the year.
Yeah. Well, so when it comes to the technologies involved and the partners involved, you're blending together IT and OT. Like, what are some of the key technologies and partners we need to be thinking about?
Yeah, so there'll be some of our traditional partnerships. Like, for instance, right now at Hannover Messe, we spent a lot of time with Cisco. We spent a lot of time with Dell. But then we had some more focused partnerships that are evolving and developing through third parties or channels for data acquisition, data normalization, and things of that nature. And it's good to get out there and blend it all together. What it comes down to is that we can help bring those types of solutions and those types of partners to a client, right? But at the end of the day, the client has to own their own strategy. They have to know what they want to end up having, have a strategy to get there, put together some standards, and then drive all the OEMs, the partners, the system integrators together to accomplish that. They really have to lead in that capacity to push all those different parties together to achieve success. Because just one OEM technology solution or one partner implementation of one thing isn't going to solve the kind of complex issues that manufacturing clients today are addressing.
And just to build on that a little bit, is it the case that if you think about the IT portfolio of technologies and the OT portfolio of technologies, do those overlap a lot, a little, none? Like what do you typically see in the market?
Well, typically they will overlap and they'll be complementary. So it'll be one of those pieces of information where you're add the missing piece of the puzzle, right? To the holistic view of an environment. So if we're talking about things like asset management or asset discovery, right? A lot of times the tools that they have on the IT side of the house is using typical IT protocols to understand the environment, to interface with the devices within those environments. But then you get into OT and they use a different set of protocols. Their communication patterns are different. And so you bring in tools that can work with them without causing risk within the environment by reacting or trying to interact with devices in a way they're not used to and causing outages. And then you can share that information into those other more main IT platforms to be able to gain that more holistic view of things. But again, it's the way of piecing together with the client and with like ourselves at WWT to be able to help them understand that and where those integration points are.
Yeah. Well, so OT is clearly becoming a more and more important part of many organizations and how they kind of go to market. And as leadership, business processes, and so forth evolve, like how are organizations approaching that? Like where do they start, and like what are some of the keys to make sure that works effectively?
Yeah, so the roles that are being addressed within these new challenges and how things are going to market for these customers really is the traditional roles of everywhere from your C-level to your senior levels are being asked to do different things, bringing them closer down into the OT organization from the IT organization. So your CIOs, your CISOs, even your COOs are being asked to have accountability and responsibility for some of these areas. And then it's also bringing some leadership evolution into the environment to where teams are being more cross-trained, bilingual, right, into the environment across traditional network operating centers or SOCs and the NOCs, like I said. But really what it comes down to where we see is an understanding of the current state to be able to really get into a manner of getting that holistic view and knowing where to start, right? We always say a lot of times, meet the customer where they are, right? And that comes with the understanding of that environment. And so asking the questions and evolving what you're going to do next from there.
Yeah. Well, Tim, though, that sounds like a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
From leadership down to the decision makers and even the influencers in different parts of the organization.
Right.
Can they really ever get to a common decision? I mean, how do they do that?
Well, that really is where the leadership comes in, like I was speaking about, of merging together those different entities of OEMs and partners and system integrators for a common success outcome on the benefit of the customer. And that comes down to having those strategies and having those success criteria and those standards internally established to know where you want to get to, right? And you may need help getting them, right? You may bring in consultation to help establish that and to understand it. But at the end of the day, just saying, I need to solve this problem, all of you go fix it, is only going to get you a fix for that problem. It won't be a holistic view at what actually needs to take place and what that impacts further down the road. Yeah. So really it's about that leadership is important in driving not just the internal people, but all the external parties that come into play to make that a success.
Yeah, so it sounds like the leadership really has to play a role in getting to that common decision making earlier in the process, during the strategy and sort of the early decision making, right?
That absolutely. They have to, if you think about your RACI models and everything, they have to be informed. They have to want to be informed. They can't just hand it off. And I think that's one of the big changes that's happening is that they're being asked to be accountable and responsible for that. So they are being more brought into the process and at a minimum being informed, if not driving more of that discussion and participating in it so that they understand it themselves and can help develop that as it's going on throughout the process.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, I want to shift directions a little bit.
Yeah.
In my career as a consultant, I've often learned that bringing ideas in from a different industry vertical to the one that I'm consulting with is useful, important, can create some new opportunities. So I'm curious if you're seeing other things that the manufacturing industry is adopting from other verticals. What are they bringing in that's of use?
So I would say from my experience in retail and healthcare before, I've got some decent examples, I think. We'll see. We'll throw them out there. So retail was always quick to kind of adopt things. If you talk about like virtualization of applications or process and things like that, like virtualization of point of sale or POS, right? They were quick to adopt that because it saved money. It cut down on backroom costs that were very small in brick and mortar, right? But then you move into manufacturing. Manufacturing, because of the complexity and the needs and the requirements of some of the tools in terms of communication latency and time and the requirements in safety. A lot of times you're dealing with human life when you're dealing with manufacturing. So they've been very hesitant to virtualize some of their applications or their tools. When we were at Hanover Messe this last week, there was a lot more talk about virtualization of tools and what could be done reasonably and safely and reduce risk to be able to move in that direction with manufacturing. And then another example from healthcare, I go back to, I was working with healthcare clients when we started doing the digital healthcare records, right?
Yeah.
The electronic healthcare records.
Yep.
And boy, that was a ride, right? That was a lot of trial and error. That was a lot of, doing it wrong to eventually do it right. And that's really the advice that I give to a lot of the manufacturers that in any, part of their digital transformation journey is to understand you're going to fumble. You're going to fall down. It's how do we get back up and learn from it and move forward and use that as a valuable experience to do it right the next time, or maybe even the next time after that. Yeah. But don't give up on that and just say, well, it's too hard, it's the way it's always been, we're just going to keep doing it. Because that's when it leads to kind of this brick wall of supportability, technical debt, things that we talk about in IT, also, mound up in the OT environments as well over time.
Right. And they may not be quite as attuned into the idea of technical debt and that stuff, right?
That's right, that's right. So when you get to life cycle management within there, you're talking about systems that have run in a manufacturing environment or a warehousing environment since that facility opened,
built, right?
So you're talking 30, 40-year systems, and it's one of those things is that's what runs the mission critical process over there. Don't look at it. Like nobody, don't even go near it. But it's how do we start to, we're having these discussions now with clients is how do we modernize those applications? Because they're thinking about things not just, well, we have to modernize it because it needs to be shiny and new. They want to modernize it because they want to share that information, that value across other systems within their environment that are more modern, that they have done things with. And this is what they're really thinking about trying to do. So bringing those legacy systems up to a more modern impact is really important to them. Or if they can't, understanding how they can get out of it what they can with reducing their risk of not bringing anything down at the same time.
Right. Well, and also imagine that, and I'm surmising here that there's a lot of interesting data going on in those systems that can be absolutely valuable to other parts of the business, R&D life cycles, operational planning, those kinds of things too, yeah?
Oh yeah, the efficiencies they can get out of it is amazing. And like you said, it's not just about the actual process of what's happening, right? It has a lot to do with everything from how you schedule for shifts, right? If we can know that we have to have planned downtime, or if we know that our supply chain isn't bringing in the raw materials we're gonna need for a third shift or a C shift, then we're going to change our scheduling, right? And we can be more efficient in the way that we utilize our people and our time and our resources within the environment. So, that really is, and all that data can come from different components within the environment. So it's one of those things where they may all be speaking different languages, but if you want to do things like get it up to a common platform for analysis in the cloud, or even on a private cloud on premises, or co-located somewhere, right, or hosted somewhere, then you need to bring it to them in a language that they understand and that will be able to be visualized and important for those people that are consuming it.
Cool. Well, I imagine that a lot of the people joining us today are coming in from manufacturing, right, and from OT spaces. And I'm curious, we talked about you bring in ideas from other verticals. I'm curious whether there are different pockets within just manufacturing in general, and I'm not saying name names of clients or anything, but sort of segments of manufacturing that are more advanced or less advanced with this. Like, so who should people be looking at in terms of their peer organizations to say, I can learn some stuff from this other organization over there?
Yeah, I would say that if you break down manufacturing, and we are the manufacturing and distribution, right? Yeah. So we get involved in a lot of things. So I would say if you look at the different kind of manufacturing in terms of pure forms of discrete and process, right? And your process could be anything from like pharmaceuticals, things like that, right? Yep. They tend to bring forward a lot of more innovative ideas and adoption of innovative ideas. But a lot of times it starts in little corner cases with their research and development. And that's because that's where their scientists are going. They want to share data. They want to get to market faster. They want to fail fast, learn, get to market, right? When it comes to those types of things, they still fall short, right? And where we start to come into the conversation a lot of times is scale, right? And supportability. It's how do you actually make this to the size our enterprise needs to adopt it, and not just one department getting value from this one thing. I would say discrete manufacturing, like an auto, right, is a little slower. They're kind of in that legacy mode. Again, they have some like design or even their research departments that will maybe be a little bit more forward thinking and doing some innovative things, but the actual discrete process and stuff, those systems don't change a lot. But we're starting to get some movement on that as well. And then you get into the warehousing systems and different types of distributions like that. And they're kind of along the lines of the discrete manufacturing. But then some of the industries, like your heavy industries like mining, I mean, they've been doing things like autonomous trucks of massive mega haulers and things like that. And now they're coming around and really taking a good look at things like private cellular, private 5G, to be able to interact with those types of pieces of equipment and to do safety and location tracking and predictive mining of the environment. So I would say, yeah, there's different areas of maturity, what we refer to as maturity within those industries. But the great thing is that they're all kind of moving things forward.
Yeah, and it's cool. And I love thinking about that you get to touch so many of those different spaces and kind of share ideas back and forth across various clients you're working with. That's very cool.
Absolutely.
Well, so, we've talked a lot about that sort of balance of interactions between IT and OT, and I'm sure that there are, lots of lessons one can learn from that apply both there and then perhaps more broadly within organizations. So what are some things you've seen or heard in that context?
For the big things to take away in all of that and to share, right, is really comes back to the seek to understand, right? So seek to understand who your audience or your customer is within the organizations, right? And then really that leadership component of the equation is being able to lead not only your internal teams, but then bring in all the third parties and all your partnerships to be able to deliver on what your standards and your strategies are. And then really don't be stagnant in terms of trying things, right? You will have setbacks, right? But don't look at that as a failure or a reason, right? And I think that's what we do a lot of, is we try to say, put a boundary around the risk or the blast radius of something, right?
Yeah.
Is, hey, we need to try something different. And a lot of times we are sitting on, clients want to know, hey, how many times have you done this at scale? Well, sometimes the answer is never. The zero. Right. We've done it this big for this one or two people, right?
And that scale part's often the hardest part, right?
It's absolutely the hardest part. That's where, you hear it about IoT, right? Or industrial IoT, IIoT. But it really is the really hard part. But you got to prove it out in some way. So, putting things down, proving them out, failing, learning, and then building the next version of it, right, and figuring out what you have to do. I really encourage people to be, cognizant of trying that within reason. Don't go wild, wild west on it. But you need to push the boundaries, because a lot of these new technologies that can be impactful to manufacturers are still, they're up and coming, right? They are somewhat leading edge, and so we need to work with our partnerships that we've established with both existing and new channels to be able to develop these solutions.
Well, you're starting to kind of summarize there with that answer, but I do want to more specifically have you sum up. So talked about a lot of things today. I'm curious, what would be your top 3 takeaways that our audience should take from the session? Yeah,
top 3 takeaways is really, I can't stress the leadership. The client has to have a role in this, right? They have to lead it for, advocate for themselves, right? We can advocate on their behalf. We can give them a lot of information and guidance. But at the end of the day, they need to push it across the finish line, and they need to stick to what that strategy is. And then it does come back to put a plan together and be very deliberate about everything, right? Understand what the outcome of the first phase will be and how that feeds into the next phase and how that feeds. So understanding what the timing is for everything, there's a specific order of operations to a lot of this stuff that has to happen. For instance, I can't do a segmentation project if I don't know what I'm segmenting from what, and if they need to be segmented or if they need to communicate, right? So seek to understand in terms of the current state and listen to the customer. And then the other part of it is, don't dismiss some of the technologies that you've already invested in that you can build off of. A lot of customers have technologies, platforms, and partnerships existing today that can be impactful to the OT. It doesn't always need to be a new partner, a new bespoke solution. It's the ability to extend into that new use case or extend into that new environment that can make it a really good investment expansion and realization for the customer for what they've already put in time and people and capital.
All right, last question.
Sure.
What are you looking forward to seeing the most when it comes to IT/OT in the next 3 to 5 years?
I'm looking forward to there being more, it just being normalized that those two parties are in a room in a project together, right? That when I go into a conference call or I go into a meeting room, we don't need to say, well, where is so-and-so? From a title perspective, is somebody from this department here? That it's natural. Yeah. It just happens.
And hopefully they've met before they got there, right?
That's right, yeah. And I'll tell you, I've seen, when you walk plant floors or you walk facility floors and you have somebody from the IT or the information system, the IS teams, kind of walk the floor, and the teams that are running the lines, the teams that are running the production control networks and stuff, they're waving at each other and they're smiling. You can tell who has kind of an ongoing relationship or developing relationship and who is very much set apart, right? But I'm looking forward to that day, but also it's exciting because a lot of these teams and a lot of these organizations are talking about bringing some of the things that I think we take for granted in the IT environments when it comes to cataloging and self-service and self-maintenance, things like that. I'm looking forward to some of that coming because they are talking a lot about bringing in we talked about asset discovery earlier in one of the questions, bringing in those assets into a common CMDB, right? And being able or an ITSM, and being able to catalog those assets, understanding what their impact within the change control process is. That means that the OT folks don't lose control of their environment, right?
Yep.
They can request services, they can request functionality, new applications and all that, but they control it because they're known within the environment, right? And they're controlling when and where and who. So that's exciting for me to see some more of those lines disappear and it just kind of become one more encompassing kind of holistic resource that, both sides of that IT/OT organizations can utilize.
Yeah. Well, Tim, I can tell you love this stuff.
Yeah, it's fun.
You can talk about this stuff all day. Very much appreciate you being with us to share your expertise.
No, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Hey, and thank you for joining us today as well. Another great episode of WWT Experts. Plenty more coming up on our calendar. Lots in the backlog to check out as well to play on demand. Head to wwt.com/events and you can check that out. And we'll see you next time.